American families spend an average of $1,139 on prom, not because it matters, but because a multi-billion-dollar industry figured out how to weaponize two things: guilty parents and terrified teenagers. Here are the 5 ways they pulled it off. Reason number 1, they created a spending arms race. Alright, reason number 1, the prom industry didn't just sell you products, they manufactured a competition you can't opt out of. Here's how it works. In the 1980s, the average prom cost about $200 per student. Dress, tuxedo, maybe dinner. Done. Fast forward to 2023. According to Visa's prom spending survey, that number is now $1,139. That's a 469% increase. But here's the thing, prom didn't get 5 times better. The dance is still in the same gym or rented ballroom. The DJ is still playing the same songs. What changed? Retailers figured out how to escalate expectations. Watch this. In the 1990s, department stores started selling prom packages, coordinated dresses, shoes, and accessories marketed as a complete look. Then tuxedo chains started offering premium packages with designer labels. Then limo companies started running group discounts that made renting a stretch Hummer feel affordable. Salons introduced prom prep packages with hair, makeup, and nails bundled together. Florists created elaborate corsage designs that cost $50 instead of $10. Photographers started offering professional pre-prom photo shoots at premium locations. Every industry saw prom and thought, how can we make this more expensive? And here's the genius part. Once one kid shows up with professional hair and a luxury limo, every other parent looks at their kid and thinks, oh God, did I underspend? That's the arms race. Nobody wants to be the parent whose kid looks cheap compared to everyone else. So spending keeps escalating year after year because opting out makes you the bad guy. The prom industry didn't just raise prices, they created a social hierarchy based on spending, where the amount you pay determines whether your kid feels included or humiliated. And once that system is in place, you can't say no without feeling like a terrible parent. Reason number 2, they weaponize parental guilt. Reason number 2, the prom industry runs on guilt-based marketing aimed directly at parents who are terrified of disappointing their kids. Check out these actual marketing slogans from prom retailers. Don't let her miss the night she'll remember forever. Every girl deserves to feel like a princess. Make his prom unforgettable. He only gets one shot. Notice the pattern. They're not selling dresses or tuxedos. They're selling the fear that if you don't spend enough, you're robbing your kid of a core memory. And here's where it gets predatory. Prom happens at the end of senior year, right when parents are feeling sentimental about their kid leaving for college. Retailers know this. They time their marketing to exploit that emotional vulnerability. Ads show mothers crying while their daughters try on dresses. Fathers proudly adjusting their son's boutonniere. The message is clear. If you love your child, you'll spend money on this. But it's not just ads, it's social pressure from other parents. Some mom mentions at a PTA meeting that her daughter's getting her hair done professionally. Another dad casually drops that they rented a limo for their son's group. Suddenly, if you're not doing the same thing, you're the cheap parent. And look, parents know logically that prom is just a dance. But when your teenager comes home and says, everyone else is getting their makeup done professionally, what are you supposed to say? Too bad. You can't, because saying no makes you feel like you're denying them something everyone else gets to have. The guilt is unbearable, so you spend the money, not because prom is worth $1,000, but because the alternative, being the parent who said no, feels worse than the credit card bill. That's not marketing, that's emotional hostage taking. And businesses know exactly what they're doing. According to retail industry reports, prom is one of the highest margin events of the year. Stores mark up prom dresses by 200 to 400% compared to regular formal wear, because they know parents will pay anything to avoid looking like they don't care. The prom industry makes billions by convincing parents that love is measured in dollars spent on one night. Reason number 3, they weaponize teenage FOMO. Reason number 3, the prom industry turned teenagers into unwitting salespeople by making prom attendance a measure of social worth. Here's the trap. Prom isn't optional anymore. It's a status symbol. And if you don't go, or if you go but don't spend enough to do it right, you're marked as the loser who couldn't afford it. According to 2024 data, 70 to 80% of high school juniors and seniors attend prom. That means if you don't go, you're in the 20 to 30% minority, and teenagers are biologically wired to fear being left out. But it's worse than that. Social media turned prom into a performance. You're not just going to a dance, you're documenting every moment. The promposal, the dress reveal, the limo arrival, the group photos, the after party. Every stage of prom is now content that gets posted, liked, and compared. If your promposal isn't elaborate enough, people notice. If your dress isn't expensive enough, people notice. If you don't have a limo, professional photos, or a post-prom trip, people notice. Prom became a competition for who can look the most put together, the most expensive, the most Instagrammable. And teenagers who can't afford to compete feel the weight of that judgment. The prom industry didn't create social media, but they absolutely exploited it. Retailers started running Instagram campaigns encouraging teens to post their prom looks with branded hashtags. Limo companies offered Instagrammable party buses with LED lighting specifically designed to photograph well. The message to teenagers is clear. If you can't afford to make prom look perfect online, you failed. And here's the cruelest part. This pressure doesn't come from adults. It comes from other teenagers. Your classmates set the standard, and businesses profit from teens enforcing it on each other. It's peer pressure as a business model, and it works. Teenagers don't want to be the one who stayed home or showed up looking cheap, so they beg their parents to spend more. And parents, already drowning in guilt, say yes. The prom industry doesn't need to advertise to teenagers directly. They just have to make sure enough kids participate at a high enough cost that everyone else feels pressured to keep up. It's brilliant, and it's exploitation. Reason number 4, Hollywood made it feel mandatory. Reason number 4, Hollywood spent 40 years training Americans to believe that if you don't go to prom, your teenage experience is incomplete. Here's the stat. According to a 2019 analysis, 68% of American teen movies made between 1980 and 2020 include a prom scene or prom-related plot. Think about what that means. For 4 decades, movies taught entire generations that prom is the climactic moment of adolescence, the night that determines your social status, validates your worth, and separates the winners from the losers. Carrie in 1976 made prom a horror show, but even that reinforced how important prom is. Important enough to be the setting for revenge. Pretty in Pink in 1986 grossed $40 million by making prom about class warfare and triumph. She's All That in 1999 made $103 million by positioning prom as the ultimate redemption arc. By the 2000s, prom wasn't just in movies, it was the entire plot. High School Musical 3, Mean Girls, The Kissing Booth, every teen movie climaxed at prom because Hollywood figured out that prom has built-in emotional stakes. And here's the problem, movies don't just reflect culture, they shape it. Teenagers grew up watching characters whose entire storylines culminated at prom. The geek gets the girl at prom. The outcast finds acceptance at prom. The makeover is revealed at prom. The confession happens at prom. Hollywood turned prom into the final boss of adolescence. And once that narrative is embedded in culture, opting out feels like skipping the final chapter of your own story. But here's what movies don't show. The kid who stayed home and had a perfectly fine life. The teenager who skipped prom and wasn't socially destroyed. The person who spent $200 instead of $1,200 and didn't regret it. Those stories don't exist in Hollywood because they don't sell the fantasy, and the fantasy is what keeps the prom industry alive. Movies convince multiple generations that prom is a defining moment, and once people believe that, businesses can charge whatever they want because how do you put a price on a defining moment? You can't, so parents pay. Hollywood didn't invent prom, but they absolutely sold it, and the prom industry cashed the checks. Reason number 5, schools made it impossible to escape. Reason number 5, schools institutionalized prom, which gave it legitimacy and made opting out feel like rebellion instead of a reasonable choice. Prom started in the late 1800s at elite colleges like Harvard and Yale as formal etiquette dinners. Then in the 1920s and 1930s, high schools copied the idea and started hosting their own scaled-down versions. But those early proms were nothing like today. They happened in school gyms with minimal decoration. Girls wore their Sunday church dresses, boys wore suits they already owned. It cost almost nothing, and it was over by 10 p.m. So what changed? Schools formalized it. By the 1950s, prom was officially on the calendar. It got its own budget line. Yearbooks dedicated pages to it. Class officers organized prom committees. Teachers chaperoned. Principals gave speeches about it being a rite of passage. And here's the key. Once schools made prom an official event, they gave it institutional authority. Prom isn't just a dance anymore. It's a school-sponsored, faculty-approved, administratively funded tradition. That makes it feel important, necessary, and mandatory, even though technically it's optional. Try to cancel prom at a high school. Parents revolt, students petition. Local news covers it like a community tragedy. School boards get threatened. Administrators learn quickly. Prom is politically untouchable, and that institutional backing traps families. If the school is hosting it, funding it, promoting it, and treating it like a milestone event, how do you tell your kid we're not participating? You can't, because now you're not just skipping a dance, you're rejecting a school tradition. You're making your kid the outsider who doesn't do what everyone does. Schools didn't mean to create a trap, but they did. By institutionalizing prom, they made it a default expectation. And once something is the default, opting out requires justification. Why aren't you going to prom? Why aren't you participating? Why are you being difficult? The burden of proof shifts. You have to explain why you're not doing the thing instead of explaining why you should. And for most families, that social pressure from schools, from other parents, from teenagers themselves is too exhausting to fight. So they go, they spend the money, they participate, not because they want to, but because the system made it easier to say yes than to say no. Schools gave prom legitimacy, and legitimacy made it inescapable. So there you have it. They created a spending arms race, weaponized parental guilt, exploited teenage FOMO, used Hollywood to make it mandatory, and got schools to legitimize the whole scam. 5 reasons the prom industry makes $4 billion a year convincing families to spend $1,000 on a night most people forget by age 30. It's not a celebration, it's a shakedown. If you love exposés on how American industries exploit your insecurities for profit, hit subscribe. We've got plenty more cultural scams to unpack, because capitalism never met an emotion it couldn't monetize.